Welcome to another episode of Business Ready for Sale podcast. My name's John Denton and I'm your Business Ready for Sale guy. This episode is the audio from an interview that I did over Zoom with a business valuer here in Perth. His name is Chris Milne and he's very well known in Perth and works with all the brokers in town and across Australia and publishes a business values newsletter. I do a full introduction of Chris on the recording, so I won't go into it now. The recording was made at the beginning of April when we were in lockdown from COVID-19, and I was wondering what effect this would have on business valuations going forward. And that was the question, or one of them, that I put to Chris. So I'll leave it now and let you get into the recording. And if you want, you can go to my website at johndenton.com.au and you can pick up a YouTube video of the interview as well. So sit back, enjoy and take notes. Hello everyone, and this is John Denton here and another in the series DNA of Business. One of the things that I do for business owners is that I work with them to help them get their businesses ready for sale. And until recently, I was a business broker as well and could help them sell them. I don't do that anymore, but I'm still working with business owners to turn their businesses into a saleable asset. And recently, with what's been going on with this coronavirus and the pandemic, it's made me think, what on earth is going to happen to business valuations and business values going forward? And when I thought about that, I thought, well, who would be the best person to be able to answer that question? And I thought of a gentleman called Chris Milne, who's joining me on this session today. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you, John, and welcome to all your listeners as well.
Thank you. Great to have you here. A little bit about Chris. Chris has been a business valuer for over 25 years. He's co-chairman of the Australian Institute of Business Brokers Registered Business Valuers Committee. He won the AIBB 2019 Training Award for services in training business valuers. And Chris also publishes a business values newsletter that's been going since 1990. And most business brokers in Perth certainly and around Australia would be familiar with Chris's newsletter. So I thought this is a great question to put to Chris. Who knows everything, isn't that right, Chris? You would have seen everything in business sales apart from a pandemic.
Well, I think that it's a bit like a hospital hand pass there. Thanks very much, John, as far as what's going to happen to business values with the coronavirus. And I think that most of us that have been in business for a long time have seen pretty much everything except for the coronavirus.
That's absolutely right. And of course, the way we value businesses is it starts with the financials. And I mean, what this is going to do to a lot of businesses and their financials is just going to, how do you do it? I mean, what do we do going forward?
Yeah, well I think what we've got to do first is initially we can't sugarcoat what's happening in the marketplace at the moment. So if you're speaking to brokers throughout Australia, what they'll tell you is that all of the deals that they're pushing forward to settlement at the moment, or most of them are falling over, and that the purchasers are now not willing to commit to buying a business. So when you look at that scenario, that the immediate panic sort of reaction is that business values have plummeted, or not all, but a lot of business values. Most people are thinking that business values have plummeted, but when you take stock and break it down a bit, that's not actually the case.
Okay, how do you say that? Why do you say that?
Well, when you're looking at a business value, you're looking at what we call the market value, and the market value is where you've got a business owner who's looking to sell his business, but he's not reacting in panic. He's not reacting in compulsion. He's going to take it through an orderly sales process. What the people are, sort of the immediate reaction is probably what people are thinking of as more of a forced sale value, and that's a value where they have to sell immediately. And once again, if you're trying to sell, for instance, a restaurant in the current marketplace, given that possibly be closed for 3 to 6 months, then you're not going to sell that for a very high price. So, but that's a forced sale value rather than a market value.
Okay. I mean, the interesting thing is that there are businesses that are going the other way as well, that there's spiking at the moment just because they're into toilet rolls or whatever it might be that's in demand. So it's an interesting situation.
Well, that's right. That's sort of the opposite end of the coin as well. What people are looking at, what the astute purchaser is looking at when they're buying a business, is they're looking at the sort of longer term future maintainable earnings, and they're not going to concentrate too much on either the immediate losses incurred by what's going to be a short-term event, we hope, being the coronavirus,
Yeah.
or even the positive sugar hit. I mean, I've valued a business this week where their March turnover is triple what it was in March compared to March of last year, and that's a business that's benefiting from the current situation. But once again, purchasers aren't going to look at that in terms of the long-term future maintainable earnings.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess what you're saying is that going forward, the buyers and the brokers, when we're looking at the financials and working out what that maintainable net profit is, it's a question of ironing out the big dip or the big spike in the figures. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And I speak to brokers that are selling these businesses weekly, if not daily, and some of the better brokers around the place have actually been saying to their clients, well, fair enough, I understand you don't want to sell your business now, and fair enough, I understand that the purchasers, they don't want to commit to purchasing right now. But what they're saying to the business owners is that it's really important for this period of time to keep a diary of how the coronavirus has affected you. So when did it start affecting the business? What has the effect been? When did you have to close up, for instance, and then eventually what time are you going to open? And also keep really good financial records of that, because this is going to be a story that, I'm going to have to tell as a valuer, and it's easier for me to tell as a valuer if there's good records to show what that impact was. And that's something we can sort of virtually excise from the story of the business in terms of its future maintainable earnings, if good records are kept.
Yeah, and that's something I encourage all business owners to do all the time normally. But it's quite often a weak spot in quite a few businesses that the records aren't up to date. I mean, now keeping your financials up to date is absolutely, more vital than ever. So
Yeah, no, sure, absolutely is, yeah.
So the accountants have got a role to play in this as well. I think some of the accountants are pretty busy. That's what I'm hearing around town.
Yeah, I think the accountants are busy for a lot of reasons. One is helping their business owners sort of with their financial situation to move through the next 3 or 6 months or however long that period is, and making sure that they're well placed with as best as possible with cash flows, etc. But I think we've got to break it down a little bit in terms of business values, and we've actually got to concentrate on what your business is going to be worth in sort of the medium to 12-month period after the initial hit of this coronavirus, because that is really what we're talking about, market value, and I think we've got to concentrate on maybe what we can call AV, which is after virus, and rather than DV, which is during virus, because that's forced sale value. So let's talk about, the market value of what, the various small business types might be worth when this has moved through a little bit, because that's the reality. That's what we should be aiming for now.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting, and I think a lot of businesses will change and actually come out leaner and meaner on the other side of this, whenever the other side is. Um, and I think it's absolutely critical that business owners are thinking like now, well, how am I going to get out of this? Have an exit strategy for the virus and be ready to hit the ground running, because a lot of their competitors will have gone by the wayside. So it sort of creates an opportunity for those businesses that are well prepared and well set up whenever we get out of the other side, And I think that's going to be a gradual process. I don't think there's going to be a day when the government suddenly says, okay, you can go to the pub now and you can go to the footy and everything's back to normal.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right, and I think that every situation teaches us something, and maybe some of those scenarios will be that if you're running a business that's using office space in the CBD, and you've worked out that actually all of your employees actually work pretty well from home. Maybe there's not such a need to work from the CB office space all the time. Maybe there's more sort of hot desks and a few meetings and that sort of thing, because face to face is still good for different scenarios. But it could be some changes, and you can learn things to make your business more efficient out of this period.
So what do you think it's going to do to commercial real estate and office rentals?
Yeah, well, I think both, not only the commercial office space, but also perhaps retail. I've long been when you do the research, the businesses that are growing in the retail space, for instance, the ones that are online. I think online in the last few years is, the industry's been growing at sort of 14 to 15% per annum, whereas the bricks and mortar has been losing market share, and that's also on the basis of digital marketing, where all of a sudden you become a retail business that you might be selling your stuff not just to your local community, but you might be selling it to America, depending on what your product type is. So the two things that have been growing businesses a lot in the last few years have been that online marketing, that digital marketing, and also the online business rather than necessarily bricks and mortar. There's a place for both. But I think considering those aspects is a good way to go.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's driving the market in interesting directions, and it's also.
And sorry, just to answer your question on what that might mean for commercial and retail space as far as the rentals go, the shopping centres, you can already see what they're trying to do. The larger shopping centres, they're trying to create more of an entertaining place to go rather than just go and shop. So they're going to be trying to keep their market share by adding to that shopping experience. But there will be a lot of pressure. I can see that the vacancy may well increase, and in both commercial office space and retail, that could be a way of going forward unless something else changes.
Do you see like a recession coming out of this? I mean, that's what the economists are sort of predicting.
I do. I think that I'm not an economist, but I do a lot of research for the Business Values newsletter, and I if you look at what the economic professionals are saying, there's very, very likely to be not only a recession in Australia, but broadly a world recession. And once again, there's also things that are going to impact there. There's going to be, higher unemployment potentially. There's going to be a lower Australian dollar, and so once again, all of these things feed into what are the business types they're going to do, better going forward. And the ones that are going to do worse going forward. And if you've got an existing business model, maybe you can change it slightly so that you end up being one of the better ones rather than one of the ones that doesn't perform so better. So, and maybe that's something we can sort of go through a bit. Have a look at maybe business types after coronavirus that are going to maybe outperform, and ones that are going to be hold okay, and then ones that are going to perhaps have values going down.
Sure. So give us some clues if we were looking for something post the virus.
Well, I think assuming that the economy's, there's an argument that the economy in Australia has, in many ways, been in a recession for a couple of years now. Anyway, when you analyse the GDP growth, yes, there is GDP growth. It was only 1.7% last year. But you actually analyse that on a per capita basis, what you find is that the growth is all being based on, because there's more people coming to Australia. It's a population growth, either by birth or by people coming to Australia, rather than actual GDP per capita, which has gone down. So we've already in some ways, had some sort of recessionary pushes, but I think we're now going to move into what a technical recession, which is 2 quarters of negative growth. And so what happens in and this is where we can use our experience, you know what I mean? But coronavirus, no one's really got experience of that, but what we do have experience with, people who've been in the market for a long time, is what happens during recessions. And what happens during recessions is generally a flight to businesses with less risk, and there's also a scenario where the higher unemployment can actually cause greater demand for that sort of smaller business, that buy a job business.
Yeah.
So those are sort of two areas where if your business is positioned in those areas, it may be okay for you. It may be, there's some positives out there. So I'm sort of going through the business types that that perform well and sell well in a recession. And what comes to mind for me, I've got some notes here. There are things like stuff that's got businesses that have got consistent recurring customers, demand and revenue. And we're talking about things like financial services, accounting, insurance, financial planning. With retail is also, if you talk about retail, it's probably more of the stuff with an inelastic demand curve, so that non-discretionary stuff like your supermarkets and your liquor stores, rather than the high-end jewelry or sort of those discretionary items. So that you're talking about non-discretionary manufacturing wholesale. So that might be essential foods and cleaning products and stuff you use regularly, rather than, once again, the sort of more luxury items. Essential services like medical or medical related, aged care, education, all of those essential type services. People still have to consume those services during recessions. And then there's what we talked about before, which is this growing industry scenario, and that really things like your online retail, online wholesale, technology businesses, and environmental and solar type businesses. All of those business types have been growing market share, and probably will continue to do so, or at least outperform the market in terms of business value.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
One of my favorite business models, and I often use this as an example, is the subscription model, which has become very popular. You know,
sure.
like the Nespresso pods. You know, they sell the machine or give the machine away very cheaply, but then you've got to keep buying the pods to make your coffee, or even printers on a computer. You know, it's the printer's cheap, but you have to keep buying the cartridges. And my favorite one of all is the Dollar Shave Club, and I don't know if you're
Dollar
familiar.
Shave Club. I haven't heard of that.
That's an absolutely. They've been. I think there's some good articles on the internet you can read, but they were a startup. I think in 2012, something like that. And the guy got this idea to help a friend out who had accumulated or bought a whole stack of razor blades. And so they started selling these razor blades by subscription for $1. And anyway, I signed up for them some years ago. And what happens is that every 2 months I get a pack of razor blades through the mail. So I don't have to go out shopping for them. They cost me not very much compared to the ones you buy in a supermarket. And so you get, with your first lot, you get your handle, and then you get your regular, it can be monthly or bi-monthly. And since then, they've started doing shaving creams and things like that. So, and I've been with them for years. And the business was so good that after 5 years, Unilever bought them out for, it was over $1 billion, you know?
It's massive, and I'm guessing too that because it's sort of online and so forth. Once again, the market is not localized; it can be anywhere.
Exactly. Yep, they're in the US. Everything comes through the post. It's just that convenience thing. And yeah, it was such a good business model. Unilever just snapped them up. And now, of course, they're selling all the other products that go along with razor blades. So that's a really, really good model.
I think it's
And
the
it's a lot.
fantastic model, and isn't it funny to notice how it's even some of the corporates, like if you look at Myob, for instance, years ago you used to be able to just buy their software and chuck it onto your computer, and that was it. And now we're all paying subscriptions, so,
Yeah,
and it's that
like,
regular recurring revenue. And so, that's what there's a lot of business types that can actually move to more of that model, isn't there, John? And if you can do that, that's going to, from a valuation point of view, people like to see consistent recurring revenue
mm,
rather than relying on one-off purchases.
yeah, absolutely. Love it. If that's more relationship sort of selling than transaction selling. It's where the business has got a relationship. Anyway,
There's
I
probably
could,
it's probably also I've just got some notes here on the businesses that are, if we break it into three sort of, those are the businesses we talked about that are perhaps going to outperform. I've got a list here of my opinion on business types that are going to um, hold steady or maintain only moderate downside, which is not a bad result in recession.
yeah,
And then there's also, the ones that are going to underperform unless they get some business coaching and so forth to actually change their model a little bit. So maybe shall we go through the ones that I think that perhaps will be in that hold steady
yes, please,
scenario?
Chris. Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
great.
So and this might surprise a few people. I think a lot of people will be looking at tourism and going, oh well, that's not going to go too well. And look, I'd 100% agree with them, and I'd probably tell them not to invest in a cruise ship business because I don't think the cruise ship business is going to go too well. But if you're looking at domestic tourism, that's one that I've marked that might actually go okay. And the reason I'm saying that is because for two reasons. One is that I think there will be a little bit more awareness and perhaps even fear of travelling overseas. And also the more expensive holidays overseas will be that higher discretionary item that people won't pay for as much, particularly given a lower Australian dollar.
Yeah,
So you've got a lower Australian dollar. You've got people that perhaps don't want to spend the big money on overseas, and there's also fear of flying over there. There's actually more. There's more outbound tourists in Australia than there is inbound from overseas. So when you look at that scenario, if more of those outbound tourists from Australia holiday locally, there's a really good chance that the local tourism businesses are going to go okay, and so they should be ready for that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's you wouldn't expect tourism to be something that you would get into, but yeah, down the track, I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah. The other one is, and this is what you see in recessions is that people sort of move down the pecking order of expense items, and so it might be that the high priced top tier restaurant might suffer a bit, but a lot of people, rather than do that, they might be spending the moderately priced restaurant or even takeaway food. And pizza shops do well in recessions, as do liquor shops. uh, so
Yeah.
so I think there's a scenario where that happens, and that can even occur in a lot of discretionary businesses, and that can even be jewelry. If jewelers selling really high priced stuff, if they move down a level, they might go better rather than trying to stay in the high price stuff during the recessionary period. So the other one is and this is a special one with an asterisk on it. Any business that has shown resilience during the coronavirus, I think, is going to get a big tick. So someone's buying it, they look back and they see how it travelled okay during the coronavirus. They'll probably say, well, that's pretty recession proof. That's a business I'll buy. So I reckon that's going to get a big tick. And the other one is maintenance businesses, and in recessions, people don't go out and buy the flash new car. They keep the old car going, and that goes not just with cars, but with a lot of things, and even businesses that their plant and equipment and so forth. They'll be probably working to patch that up and maintain it rather than buying new stuff, and so. Once again, maintenance businesses tend to go okay in recessions. Yep. So those are kind of and probably any other business that benefits from a lower Australian dollar. So your exporters, etc.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's a good point as well. Yeah, there's always winners and losers, aren't there? I think you've given a few people some hope with that. There's a question came to mind. Yeah, and the other thing is creativity. Businesses have got to be a lot more creative. We went and picked up a pizza the other Friday from the takeaway shop at our local shops. And next to the pizza shop, there's a Malaysian takeaway and there's a fish and chip shop. And whilst I was sitting in the car, my wife went in to pick up the pizza. You've got the guy coming out of the Malaysian with takeaway food and out of the fish and chip shop and taking them into the pizza shop. They were pooling their delivery resources.
Fantastic. That's great.
It's terrific to see, isn't it? It's just, let's get together and see how we can help each other out here.
No, I think that's fantastic. And even though it's probably the negative view, I think it's actually worthwhile going through the business types that I think are going to underperform. And the reason for that is that if you're maybe in that category, that there's an opportunity to think about changing your business model a bit so that you won't get caught as bad. Shall we have a crack at that, John? Have a crack at the ones that are, because I think it's good to have the reality, and once again, these are my opinions. I don't think anybody exactly knows the outside what's going to be happen at the end of the coronavirus, but these are kind of based on research and reading and so forth that my opinion as to what they might be. So businesses to underperform are that higher priced discretionary retail, discretionary anything, really. Do you know what I mean? Discretionary anything. So if people in recessions, people hold their purse close to themselves and they're close to their chest, and they don't they spend money on necessities, and they're very careful about spending money on any discretionary items. And so we're talking about, car sales yards, probably international travel agencies, high-priced jewelry, high-priced clothing boutiques, and all that sort of thing. We're talking about, your upmarket restaurants, your discretionary service businesses like sort of limousines and high-end beauty and all that sort of stuff. That won't affect you and I don't think, John, the high-end beauty, but
No,
um,
I'm not getting my nails done anymore.
and also even the wholesalers and manufacturers of discretionary goods like upmarket furniture and these sorts of things. They're the businesses that tend to not go as well in recessions. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it all makes good sense, Chris. May not all be good news, but at least it makes good sense. So, a couple of tips for business owners going forward before we wrap up.
Yeah, so I think once again, just reiterating is that now's the time to, and some people have got this quiet, their restaurants are closed and lots of businesses are closed. So if you've got yourself a little bit of free time, if you managed to, put some facility in place so that you're not too stressed about your financial situation, you can sit out, use the time to strategize. Make sure you keep that diary and your financials well organized so you can explain the period where the business wasn't trading as well, and when we look back on that, then strategize. And it might be strategizing if you're aware, if you're thinking, well, we are going to go into sort of a recessionary type phase. How do I remodel my business so that it's going to be in one of those sort of categories that's going to outperform rather than underperform in a recessionary circumstance over the next year or two? And that's where this is the time to get advice from people such as yourself, John, to actually prepare your business. If you're going to go and put your business on the market, if you're thinking about doing that in a year's time or even 2 years' time, you've got to make sure that you actually go and engage with the person who's going to help you prepare your business for the market, and your business broker. You've got to engage with them early to get your business prepared. And that might also mean, based on advice you get from those people, do I have to change my business model a little bit to make it more digestible by the market? So I think that's the key. Don't sit back and worry and don't change anything. Use the time strategically.
So, you wouldn't advise any business owners to be closing their business down for 2 or 3 months and then expecting to come out in good shape at the other end.
Well, I mean, there's going to be forced closures with restaurants and that sort of thing, but I think you've got to be thinking, well, when it does come time to open up, we're going to have to maybe do a little bit of a marketing spike, to yes, we're open again, yes, we're trading again, so get back in the market, and don't, as I say, don't put yourself in the forced sale position. That's the forced sale. You don't want that forced sale value on your return when you sell your business. What you want is the market value, and that's that market value. Once the world's turned to normal again, you can show that the normal trading of your business and the future maintainable earnings is this, and let's get a fair value for your business, a fair market value, rather than fall into the trap of getting that forced sale value.
Yeah, yeah. All good advice, Chris. We've got to wrap up now. How can people get in contact with you if they got any questions or want a bit more information?
So probably the best way is if you Google Jarrett Business Valuations and our website, www.jarrett.com.au. You can get onto the website and you can look at our services, including our Business Values newsletter, which is we've got about 400 subscribers, which are industry people, or you can call me directly on 0458 888 005.
Beautiful. And that's Jarrett, spelled J for Juliet,
That's it.
.com.au, yeah. And I'll put this up with the audio and the video anyway, so people can find you. In a little while and on a regular basis, I run business ready for sale workshops to help business owners understand the business sale process, the valuation process, and how to tune their business up to make it more valuable and more saleable. And in fact, Chris, you're going to come onto that for me on the next one and give a little talk about the valuations and things on there. So thank you for that. And if
sure, and if I could just also
sure.
offer, John, that the next Business Values newsletter that I do, which is due out at the end of April, I will, for your listeners, make a free copy of that available. So I'll make that available to you, John, so you can send out a free copy. A lot of the sort of the principles we've discussed today, but also a bit more of the facts and figures and research behind that will be in that article in that Business Values newsletter. So we'll make that available as well.
Fantastic. That's great, Chris. And if you want to find out when you can get into one of my workshops, which now, of course, is done online and it's in 2 parts. You can either do part 1, part 2, or both. Just go to johndenton.com.au and then go to workshops and you'll find when the next one's coming up. I used to say when the next one's coming up in your area, but now I don't care where you are because it's all virtual. All right. So thank you very much, Chris. It's been great chatting to you and great insights as always. And yep, I look forward to doing this again in the future.
Very good. Thanks, John.
Okay. Bye for now, Chris.
Right.
So there you have it. And I hope you enjoyed that and got something out of it. Later on in August, so 3 months or so down the track, I did another interview with Chris, and you'll find that on a later Business Ready for Sale podcast episode to see what had come true, what had happened, what changes had come about after the passage of time. So look out for that as well. So thank you for listening and look forward to being with you on the next Business Ready for Sale podcast.